Glad you can make it, because I've got something very important to talk to you about. Security in your parts department. Now, if you pardon the pun, the part you play in it. Now, how do I begin? All right, here goes. Security for your parts department is a cost factor. Just as important to the bottom line as the cost of labor, inventory, and overhead. I don't know if you know this, but statistics show that the current level of net profit, that's profits after all costs are deducted, net profits in parts operations can be as low as 3 to 4% of sales. Now, if you're wondering what that means to you, I'd say you better wise up. It means that each part that disappears takes an additional sales of 25 to 50 units just to break even. Oh, any parts manager worth his salt will tell you that break even is not the name of the game. The fact is that disappearing parts can knock your departmental profit into a cocked hat. So the better the security system, the better the profitability. And profit is the name of the game. You watch this training module, and you can learn how other parts managers are safeguarding parts and profits. Parts managers who are achieving good security for their parts operation. You can learn how to check a parts department for better security opportunities. And you can pick up some valuable tips on how to set up a depth deterrent system in your parts department. The pros call it maximum security. To reach maximum security, you and your fellow employees need to know a few key facts, what it is and why it's necessary. And that security is everybody's business, not just the parts manager. And I'll tell you something else. You see, that attitude is real important in keeping your operation secure. Without the dedication and commitment to security by you and the other people on your parts team, a secure department is impossible. The attitude of you and your fellow workers can mean the difference between a successful parts operation and a failure. Now, just what is maximum security, you might ask? Well, the best way I can explain it is, it's a depth deterrent operation in which all control points are monitored, supervised, and regulated. Control being the operative word here. These important control points are located throughout the department. They break down into 3 security areas: facility security, inventory security, and cash security. We'll look at each one separately. Let's start with the facility security. In order for parts to disappear, people first must have access. The control points here are largely entry control. And they include door locks, window protection, inside and outside security lighting, surveillance mirrors, and very important, key control. And I mean keys. Parts department usually have a number of entry points that can be controlled. The back end, shipping and receiving. That's where parts first come under the custody of parts department. The retail counter. That's where retail customers purchase and pick up parts. The technician counter up here. That's where service technicians present their ROs and pick up parts. Of course, all these entry points are tightly secured during non-business hours. Entry control experts recommend security lighting, alarm systems, and many dealerships, 1 or more guards. Now, one more thing. The only way to go on doors is deadbolt locks with at least a 1-inch throw. For very little expense, any spring latch door can be secured from illegal entry by adding a deadbolt lock. Now, what about business hours? Well, the answer is that business hours require more security than off hours. That's because retail customers, service technicians, and incoming freight drivers must have departmental access to do business. So you change your entry control to accommodate that need. Now, the trick is not to back off too far. There is still a security line to be drawn and not to be crossed if you're serious about protecting your inventory. In the receiving area, there should be an attention bell that sounds every time the big receiving door opens, and a bell or a buzzer on any department exterior doors. This will alert receiving personnel that someone is entering. By the way, Both doors should be locked from the outside and opened only by inside control. All receiving doors leading into the department should have locks with automatic locking on the outside. Leaving either of these doors open or unlocked is an invitation for theft to occur. An exterior entry doorbell will alert receiving personnel that entry is requested. It should ring in receiving and also at the front counter. All department exterior door locks should be changed periodically. Some parts managers change locks as often as every 6 months. The security situation in your department will determine how often. And entry keys are not to be bandied about. Usually it's sufficient to key the parts manager, general manager, and dealer. If the assistant manager opens up or closes, he'll need one too. All keys should be engraved with the message, "Do not duplicate." Keys should be counted and accounted for periodically. When keys are assigned, they should be signed for and dated. Anyone leaving employment must turn in any and all departmental keys. Any retail counter lift door or swing door access must be secured from customer use with a locking device positioned so customers cannot reach it. Some use a buzzer lock release activated by a counter person. However you do it, you should have signage clearly stating entry is for parts personnel only. And you know, while I'm thinking about it, any counter lift, swing doors, or access doors between the service department and parts should be treated likewise, secured or locked with clear instructions that entry is for parts personnel only. Now let's hear what an entry security expert has to say about that.
Security of your parts facility is an important part of your job. If your location is within the dealership, you can tie in with their security. If it's a separate location, then you want to look at getting your own security system. 3 areas that you should look at are the perimeter of your building, the area within the building, and of course the area where you keep the high-value merchandise. We call this the prize area. Now let's look at the perimeter. You have doors, overhead doors, doors for egress and access into the building. These doors need to have good locks. The locking mechanisms are easily defeatable if they're just key locks, because keys can be made and used by anyone. What they have on the market today are some access control type locks that can be used with the same locking mechanisms you have, but just changing the control. Rather than using a key, you're using a code that you give to the people that can enter the building. This allows you 2 things. It allows you to know who is coming into the building and when they are coming in, and of course when they leave. It is important that you have codes assigned to only those people who can come into the building or who you want into those particular areas. These locks can be put on the high-value areas where you have cages. They can be put on your doors from the outside into the building, and they can be used to control movement within the building. These locks also have with them a little programmer that can tell you the last 50 people who came in and went out of that area. So you have a pretty good control at a very low cost. You don't have to change locks. All you do is change codes. That way you can eliminate people or put people back into the system. The second area we want to look at is the area that you have within inside your parts department. This area needs to have some type of motion protection so that we know if people are moving around within that area. Passive infrared protection is very good. It is probably the best on the market today. This will allow you to know if somebody moved into the area, and it will set off the alarm. The third area you need to look at is that prize area, that high-value area. It should be a caged area, and it should have good locks on it. Again, using an access control lock tells you who can go in, when they can go in, and what they can do there. After you've looked at those 3 areas, let's look at your retail area. Your retail area should be set up so that the cashier can see what's going on in the retail area. If this is not feasible, then we can add some control mechanisms such as mirrors or small surveillance cameras that will tell you what's going on in that area. This gives either your operator at the cash register or somebody else in the facility a control over that particular area. All these things can be obtained and you can discuss them with a security dealer. You'll find a security dealer in your yellow pages under burglar alarms. You can also talk to your other dealerships in the area and find out who they use. Get to know somebody in the area that you're comfortable to work with, and get them to come in and give you what you need for your security system.
Ah, you're back. You can see that understanding physical security is an important part of attaining maximum security. Now let's go into inventory security. Of course, parts often disappear due to inventory mistakes, and these show up as discrepancies. But we're not covering that today. That kind of loss was covered in 2 previous PartSmart modules on inventory control. The case of the disappearing profit and physical inventory by the numbers. What we're talking about now is parts that disappear because someone pulled a fast one and walked off with a part without paying the price. Everyone who has access to parts has that opportunity. At the retail counter, the retail customer who walks past the cashier without settling up. In the shipping receiving area, the freight delivery driver left alone without supervision. At the service counter, the service technician who wants to try a part to see if it fits. Well, it stands to reason then that these are key areas to control. A tight, theft deterrent system in these areas will prevent inventory theft opportunities from developing. The receiving and shipping area has numerous security points that must be tightly controlled. Incoming shipments must be checked. Freight bill against packing slip number against part number on the part. To be certain, no missing parts are logged in as received. This will prevent departments from being a victim of any parts pilfered from the incoming shipment. The receiving shipping area should be adequate in size so that incoming and outgoing shipments can be kept isolated from parts bins. The trick here is to keep confusion to a minimum. The entire area should be under the surveillance of the shipping clerk whenever there is receiving or shipping activity. You want to keep incoming shipments isolated until they are in the hands of those responsible for stocking them, and checking all shipments at once. Don't leave parts outside overnight. That's only an invitation for them to find a new home. Only trained authorized personnel should be allowed to check in and put away stock. Mark the packing slips with the freight bill number, date, and name of persons checking the shipment in. This is the start of a paper trail that will help deter theft. Some parts department isolate incoming shipments in a separate and locked cage or other areas until they are accounted for and logged in. If you have a separate area, be sure to change the locks or padlocks often. This kind of locked, isolated area is also required for nighttime deliveries by dedicated carriers. Outgoing shipments also should be kept separate from stock and from incoming shipments. The rule of thumb here is nothing goes out the door unless it's been checked and double-checked and it has the proper paperwork. Check dealership truck deliveries before they leave the building to assure that the part numbers and quantities match the invoice. Some dealerships check every single outgoing shipment. Others rely on random spot checks. For best results, the person packing the truck and checking shipment accuracy should not be the delivery driver. On any return parts picked up by the delivery driver and returned for credit, always check back against the original invoice for part and price. And know, as they say, no ticky, no laundry. All part return documents should be marked with the name, address, telephone number of customer, invoice number, and name of the person authorizing the return. That gives you a security paper trail that I talked about earlier. All outgoing shipments should be prepared under the watchful eye of the shipping clerk. His office or station should be in a position to view the entire shipping receiving area. Core returns should be carefully controlled. They are definitely not junk or scrap. Some cores are valued at upwards of $700. These are our files. These are the paper trails for your inventory that keep theft at bay. And inventory security is our next subject. The data on these order sales and invoice documents leave an indelible trail you can use to determine when parts arrive and when and how they leave. Use them. But for maximum security, add information to them that will help build a tighter inventory security system. Signatures. That's what does it. Whenever possible, all documents, shipping vouchers, packing slip, ROs, counter tickets, delivery invoices, all should be signed and dated by the person who processed the documents. In some cases, cash returns, for example, you need the signature and address and telephone number of the customer returning the part. And speaking of returns, all return paperwork from wholesale customers should be routed quickly to the inventory control clerk or wholesale manager to be checked against customer invoices to verify the part was purchased from your dealership. Outside purchase orders should be cross-referenced to a RO or a counter ticket. Each should also be signed by the purchaser and checked and authorized by the parts manager. Parts personnel should not write purchase orders for themselves. That's just to keep things on the up and up. Persons who post invoices should check for a signature and a cross-reference to an RO or a counter ticket. Prices on invoices from outside purchases should be checked for proper discounts. Now, it's important to watch numerical sequence on counter tickets, purchase orders, and return documents. Numbered pads should be under parts manager control and only let out as needed. Voiding counter tickets and invoices should require parts management validation. Daily checks should be made of sales tickets and ROs to check for anything unusual. An open RO or counter ticket report and lost document report should be required on a periodic basis, at least once a month for maximum security. Place high-priced inventory away from service and retail counters. In the case of high-priced ticket items such as radios, CD players, ECMs, a locked storage bin is called for. You may want to have a bell or a buzzer to signal when these locked doors are being opened. And for maximum security, make it a 2-key locking system. Take another PartSmart tip from me. When parts are being taken, chances are it won't be uncovered until a physical inventory is done. So think about how your department can mobilize a continuous inventory check system, what some call perpetual inventory. Some dealerships accomplish perpetual inventory by physically counting parts every time they go to a bin to pull an order, and then check that physical count against a computer count. In one parts operation, 100 part numbers a day are counted and checked against the computer. Another dealership counts entire bins on a random basis. Many parts managers are pulling physical inventory twice a year to achieve better inventory security. But you know, the parts manager is the single most important control point to achieve maximum security. We talked about developing the security attitude earlier. Well, that must start from the top. If the parts manager doesn't have a zero shortage attitude, his people won't either. Since the parts manager has a major responsibility for security, his office should be central to the parts operation and the people working in it. A parts manager's office with plenty of glass and rays to see over the entire department is a maximum security measure. Let's hear from the guys who make maximum security happen.
We feel security is very important to the parts operation because of the investment in the inventory here in the parts department. The parts department is the only department who actually pays for their inventory as it is received. So we feel security is a very important aspect of the parts department. I feel that security in the parts department is the direct responsibility of the parts manager, but there is also a responsibility for every employee within the parts department to take an active role in security. Our security procedures for the technician's counter primarily consist of keeping the door locked so that no one can walk up and have access to the parts department. We also are on electronic repair orders here, and the back counter persons are required to attach a picking ticket which lists all parts that have been charged against a repair order to be attached to the soft copy of the repair order that is kept in the parts department. That allows any person to access that repair order, and by reviewing the picking ticket, you can see just what parts have been charged against that repair order. Our security procedures for outgoing deliveries involve a random truck inventory. And by that I mean that at any given time a driver can be approached by myself or an assistant manager and asked to offload the truck and verify that the pieces that are in the truck can actually be documented with proper paperwork to justify possession. We have a standard operating procedure for our receiving area, which requires our overhead access door to be locked at all times unless there is someone in attendance at the door. Key control in the parts department is regulated through the use of a signature sheet. At the time an employee is issued with a key, that employee is noted on this sheet, and that sheet remains in effect until the employee is either discharged, leaves the company, or the locks have been changed in the parts department. We reserve the right in the form of issuing keys to parts department personnel only. No one else, including general manager and even the owner of our particular store, has keys to the parts department. That is a right that we reserve exclusively for parts department employees.
Now let's take a good look at security in the retail display area. It's ironic that the very reason for the retail area is to bring customers in contact with retail merchandise offered for sale. Yet, that same process is central to the work of shoplifters, up to the point where they conceal merchandise and walk out without paying. Shoplifters act just like retail customers, so surveillance is the key control for shoplifters. Those of you who have extensive retail stock, items for sale in front of the counter, you need to take certain security precautions. Basically, you want to see what's going on every parts rack and down every aisle. One dealership experiencing retail theft problems did nothing more than change the direction of display racks. They ran them perpendicular to the counter so the retail counter person could see directly down the aisles and both sides of the racks. A simple move, but it put an end to the problem. And oh, by the way, a word to the wise. Catching shoplifters could be more of a hassle than you think. Providing necessary legal proof for prosecution is difficult, at best. It's smarter to control your retail area by making it difficult to shoplift. Here are some important PartSmart tips to help scare shoplifters away. Don't leave your retail area unattended, even when other dealership personnel are there. Set up your retail display so counter people can see all stock and customers. Use strategically placed surveillance mirrors to track retail customers. Mirrors will also alert shoplifters that someone is watching. Expensive retail merchandise on display, such as radios, CD players, should be locked behind glass doors. A customer can see it, but they can't lift it. Let's hear it now from a parts manager with a large investment in retail security.
For retail display security, we have a series of locked display cases. Our open bins are within sight of the countermen, and we have a rule to never leave the counter unattended. My dealer likes to tell me that if we leave parts laying on the counter, it's like leaving a $20 bill out there. And that's true, because everything that's in this department has been bought and paid for within the dealership within 30 days. So it's all money. Parts are money. If I lost 2 or 3 parts a day out of my department, I'd be very nervous. It adds up to thousands of dollars over the course of a year.
So far, we've covered facility security and inventory security. Now let's take a close look at handling of cash. Cash in the retail parts cash register and cash picked up by the delivery driver. There are many ways to manipulate cash. We don't have time to go into them here. Suffice it to say that you need a maximum security method of handling cash. To begin with, cash in a register must be counted by 2 people. First, when the register is set up at the beginning of the day. Next, at appropriate intervals during the day. And finally, when it's closed out and balanced at the end of the workday. Closing out means balancing the drawer. The person or persons using the drawer should be required to count and balance all cash and checks. All paid counter tickets and invoices should be listed and accounted for daily. The closeout tape should be signed by those responsible. An unbalanced cash drawer cannot be tolerated. If the retail cash register is behind the counter, it should be placed in such a way that retail customers cannot reach the drawer in the front of the counter. If in a booth, the parts cashier should be able to see the retail area and visually track customers from the counter to the cashier station. Cash register users should be instructed to ring up each sale in the proper sequence and for the exact amount. They should close the cash drawer after each sale and should not be making change without recording sales. Cashiers should provide customers with a sales receipt on every transaction. This will help prevent underringing. Use a register that visually broadcasts the sale amount to the customer. In addition, cashiers should call out the amount of the sale to the customer. It reassures the customer as to the correct amount. It prevents carelessness, and it gives the parts manager a visual and audible control point at which to verify parts against a register amount. And of course, all voids and overrings must be approved by parts management. Another way cash is received is through payment for parts delivered by your delivery drivers. Some departments keep a separate shipping record or a log sheet on dealership truck delivery, listing parts, invoice number, address, and if it's cash or charge. This log sheet is a control point that can be checked against return delivery documents to verify delivery and cash or delivery pickup. Take a PartSmart tip from me. Always leave one copy of the delivery invoice at the dealership. Then check these against the signed delivery receipts the driver brings back. This will give the manager a chance to check for mistakes or altered or missing invoices. Now let's get some expert advice on how cash should be handled.
We handle cash security with the cash register with a three-way system. All of our invoices are rung onto the tape along with the counterman's ID and the amount rung up. At the end of the day, we reconcile the money to the tape to a cash edit list which verifies the amount of invoices we have to the amount of money we have. At the end of the day, we have a number that we're trying to match off the edit list. We match that number to what money we received and also to the invoices that were rung in to be sure that the balances are correct. We handle the cash that's picked up by the delivery driver with a separate route sheet in which he can record the amount of money he was received to the amount of money we expect. When he returns to the dealership, we take the money, bring it into the register as soon as he gets back.
Maximum security. That's what we've been talking about. You had a chance to look at a typical parts operation for maximum security opportunities and requirements. We've looked at security of the premises, security of your inventory investment, and security of your cash flow. We've laid down some tight security considerations for you to think about. You may find it too tight to be practical for your operation, but one thing I learned is that it's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to parts and cash security. The bottom line is good security is good inventory management, and you're all involved and responsible for that. As you have seen, security impacts directly on departmental profit or loss. We've covered some of the basic rules of departmental security. Document all transactions to provide you with that all-important paper trail. Keep records accurate and do it on a daily basis. Limit physical access to the department and to all departmental keys. Follow strict receiving and shipping procedures. How much time and effort and money should be spent on security? Well, it all depends on you and your parts department management. But we do know this. The commitment to keeping the parts department secure from theft is just as important to profitability as labor, inventory, and overhead costs. Just remember this, security is everybody's business. If ignored, it could cost you plenty. So make it your business too. You know, this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.